And I'm live. Welcome to another episode of Mondays with Miko. Thank you all for bearing with me last week. I took a little bit of a vacation last week. I was actually around town, but I just took a little break. But I'm back with a vengeance. So if you're watching it on replay, I thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing it to some pages. If you can also share it as well, I'll appreciate it. Today, I am going to be discussing, my topics are, I'm going to talk about the select committee, and I'm actually going to show some videos. So I'm going to spend the majority of the time talking about, hey, Joy, hey, cuz, talking about the January 6th select committee. And then we're going to have some other topics. But it's a very important time in our country right now. And, I don't want anybody to sleep on it. So, but for now, if you guys can just let's talk, again, if you're watching this, I'm sharing it to a couple places, but if you, I see the questions best from the Friends of Miko Picket page. So if you can hop over there and watch the video from there, then I can answer your questions better real time. But also, and on the questions that come up on YouTube, I go back and I answer those questions later. And it's kind of interesting. On YouTube, y'all, is where I have most of my haters. I kind of enjoy it though. See, I smile. Because you know what? Here's a couple things. I'm calling them haters and I'm being a little bit sarcastic. But at the same time, I have to be able to see things from, I see you, Joy, but I have to be able to see things from, all angles, right? Maybe I'm missing something, So I appreciate people who challenge me as long as you do it constructively and without insulting me personally. Other than that, I'm good. So, I'm actually using some new equipment today. So I hope my sound is good. How's my sound, y'all? Let me know if you guys can hear me loud and clear. And then we'll go ahead and get into it. So, the January 6th Select Committee. So, let's talk about what that means. Hello, Gail. So, the January 6th Select Committee is where the House of Representatives is they're having a series of hearings, and they're investigating Insurrection Day. I don't know why people aren't calling it Insurrection Day. So, but it is. There was an insurrection in our land on January 6th, right? And so it's kicked off. It started. And what I'm gonna play for you guys some videos. Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm going to kick off some videos for you guys to watch. And then at the end of those videos, we'll have a chat. We'll talk about it. I focused on the 4 heroes who had their day, right? They came to DC and they had their day. And then but we'll get to know a little bit more about them in a minute. So, but I really just want everybody to be aware, because just because you have a certain ethnicity doesn't mean that you can whitewash an insurrection, right? We all saw it. It wasn't a tourist, and I'm gonna talk to you about my vacation to DC, what it's like to be a tourist in DC. And it was no insurrection. There were no fighting, no police got injured. But it's important that we follow this and we follow this closely. So as much as I can, I'm going to share with you what I'm learning as I'm seeing it. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and start with Sergeant. Oh, I hope I'm saying his name. Sergeant Aquilo Ganell. Let's start with him. And each one of these videos is pretty much less than 2 minutes. But I want you to hear what he had to say. Here he is.
But on January 6th, for the first time, I was more afraid to work at the Capitol than my entire deployment to Iraq. In Iraq, we expected armed violence because we were in a war zone. But nothing my experience in the Army or as a law enforcement officer prepared me for what we confronted on January 6th. But the physical violence we experienced was horrific and devastating. My fellow officers and I were punched, kicked, shoved, sprayed with chemical irritants, and even blinded with eye-damaging lasers by a violent mob, who apparently saw us, law enforcement officers, dedicated to ironically protecting them as U.S. citizens, as an impediment to their attempted insurrection. The mob brought weapons to try to accomplish their insurrectionist objectives and use them against us. Based on the coordinated tactics we observed and verbal commands we heard, it appears that many of these attackers had law enforcement or military experience. I'm still trying to recover from my injuries. Many of my fellow Capitol officers, as well as MPD officers, suffer terrible physical injuries from the violence inflicted on us on January 6th. I sustained injuries on both my hands, my left shoulder, my left calf, and my right foot. I already had undergone bone fusion surgery on my right foot, and I was just told that I need surgery on my left shoulder. I have been on medical and administrative leave for much of the past 6 months, and I expect to need further rehabilitation for possibly more than a year.
So, there's a couple things he said that resonated with me. The first one was, he said, for the first time, I was more afraid to work at the Capitol than in Iraq. And he goes on, he talks a lot about, you're going to hear some other folks that I picked up talk about, how they were trying to be recruited, that the insurrectionists were trying to recruit the police officers. Not all the police officers that they thought looked like them. They were trying to recruit them. But he said he was more afraid to work at the Capitol. He was afraid for his life. And you hear about his injuries at the end. And then another thing that he said, and a couple of others said as well, is that it was apparent that many had law enforcement or military experience based on the tactics that they were using. How interesting is that? So now let's hear from Officer Michael Fanone. And you would have heard, he's been on the news a lot. He's very verbal. He's very upset with how Congress is acting. But here's a little bit of what he had to say on was it Monday? Last week? It was 6 days ago. I think it was Tuesday. Here we go.
I thought I had seen it all, many times over. Yet what I witnessed and experienced on January 6, 2021 was unlike anything I had ever seen, anything I had ever experienced or could have imagined in my country. On that day, I participated in the defense of the United States Capitol from an armed mob. At some point during the fighting, I was dragged from the line of officers and into the crowd. I heard someone scream, "I got one!" As I was swarmed by a violent mob, they ripped off my badge. They grabbed and stripped me of my radio. They seized ammunition that was secured to my body. They began to beat me with their fists and with what felt like hard metal objects. At one point, I came face to face with an attacker who repeatedly lunged for me and attempted to remove my firearm. I heard chanting from some in the crowd, "Get his gun," and kill him with his own gun. I was aware enough to recognize I was at risk of being stripped of and killed with my own firearm. I was electrocuted again and again and again with a taser. I'm sure I was screaming, but I don't think I could even hear my own voice. Unconscious and remained so for more than 4 minutes. I know that Jimmy helped to evacuate me from the building and drove me to MedStar Washington Hospital Center, despite suffering significant injuries himself. At the hospital, doctors told me that I had suffered a heart attack, and I was later diagnosed with a concussion, a traumatic brain injury, and post-traumatic stress disorder. What makes the struggle harder and more painful is to know so many of my fellow citizens including so many of the people I put my life at risk to defend, are downplaying or outright denying what happened. I feel like I went to hell and back to protect them and the people in this room. But too many are now telling me that hell doesn't exist, or that hell actually wasn't that bad. The indifference shown to my colleagues is disgraceful.
Disgraceful. He also, a couple things about Officer Fanone that I didn't know, that I learned watching the hearing. One is he was an undercover officer. He didn't normally wear his uniform. He got dressed in uniform because that much help was needed. So he ran to the scene to help. Outside of what he usually does, he usually wears a suit and tie. And he says people are trying to tell him that hell didn't exist. So January 6th, we watched it on TV. The people who lived it there called it hell. But yet there's others that want us to believe that it was a vacation. And when he slammed his hand down, I was like, wow, he actually did that in Congress. But he said the indifference shown to my colleagues is disgraceful. When he said that, he was talking to the people in the room, the people who make the big bucks, the representatives, the people in Congress. Go, Officer Fanone. I'm not done. I got about 3 more videos. I hope you guys are okay. What do you guys think? 3 more videos, short ones. So next we're going to watch Officer Daniel Hodges. And he is very interesting what he has to say. You've seen this video a lot with the guy who squeezed in the door. This guy who squeezed in the door, right? And you also hear some people say, oh, it was BLM or it was Antifa, right? They tried to say that it was anybody else that started the insurrection other than who actually did. So listen to what Officer Hodges has to say about who was there.
The sea of people was punctuated throughout by flags, mostly variations of American flags and Trump flags. There was Gadsden flags. It was clear the terrorists perceived themselves to be Christians. I saw a man in a QAnon hoodie exclaims, "This is the time to choose which side of history to be on." A man whose shirt read, "God, Guns, and Trump" stood behind him, silently holding a Trump flag. Two sides were at a stalemate at a metal door frame that sat in the middle of the hallway. At the front line, I inserted myself so the frame was at my back in an effort to give myself something to brace against and provide additional strength when pushing forward. Unfortunately, soon after I secured this position, the momentum shifted and we lost the ground that got me there. On my left was a man with a clear riot shield stolen during the assault. He slammed it against me and, with all the weight of the bodies pushing behind him, trapped me. My arms were pinned and effectively useless, trapped against either the shield on my left or the door frame on my right. With my posture granting me no functional strength or freedom of movement, I was effectively defenseless and gradually sustaining injury from the increasing pressure of the mob. Directly in front of me, a man seized the opportunity of my vulnerability. He grabbed the front of my gas mask and used it to beat my head against the door. He switched to pulling it off my head, the straps stretching against my skull and straining my neck. He never uttered any words I recognized, but opted instead for guttural screams. I remember him foaming at the mouth. He also put his cell phone in his mouth so that he had both hands free to assault me. Eventually, he succeeded in stripping away my gas mask, and a new rush of exposure to CS and OC spray hit me. The mob of terrorists were coordinating their efforts now, shouting, "Heave! Ho!" as they synchronized, pushing their weight forward, crushing me further against the metal door frame. The man in front of me grabbed my baton that I still held in my hands, and in my current state, I was unable to retain my weapon. He bashed me in the head and face with it, rupturing my lip and adding additional injury to my skull.
Okay, so these officers had no little injuries. They had major, serious injuries. It's by the grace of God that any one of them are still alive today. Stephen, question for you. You said the biggest police union took months to get in touch with him. Well, two things. One, I'm going to have to get you on some of these recaps that I'm doing with me. We can do them together on Mondays if you're free. But two, what do you mean by that? The biggest police union took months to get in touch with whom? And for what? So if you could just elaborate in the chat there, I'll appreciate it. So back to Officer Hodges. He clearly told everybody who was there. Trump flags, QAnon, Christians. Not this kind of Christian, but people who proclaim to be Christians. They were there and proud and unafraid to be there. Unmasked on camera. What gave these people that much confidence to storm into a government building and do what they did and fight the police with their military and police background? While we wait to hear from Mr. Hernand, I hope you're still with us. We're going to pay the last one, right? So Officer Hodges, he talks about who was there. Officer Dunn, Officer Dunn, I'm going to show him next. He also is going to talk about who was there. And he's the only African-American who testified. So I want you to hear what he said. But I also need to prepare you because he uses the N-word. And it's just sad. But he uses the N-word. So if you have children in the room, I'm going to warn you before the N-word is played. Video is only about a 1 minute and 30 seconds. But that's just a heads up. And let's listen to just a little bit of what Officer Dunn had to say.
More and more insurrectionists were pouring into the area by the speaker's lobby near the rotunda, and some wearing MAGA hats and shirts that said Trump 2020. I told them to just leave the Capitol, and in response they yelled, "No, man, this is our house. President Trump invited us here. We're here to stop the steal." A woman in a pink MAGA shirt yelled, "You hear that, guys? This nigger voted for Joe Biden." Then the crowd, perhaps around 20 people, joined in screaming, "Boo, fucking nigger." No one had ever called me a nigger while wearing the uniform of a Capitol Police officer. In the days following the attempted insurrection, other Black officers shared with me their own stories of racial abuse on January 6th. One officer told me he had never, and in his entire 40 years of life, been called a nigger to his face, and that streak ended on January 6th. Yet another Black officer later told me he had been confronted by insurrectionists in the Capitol who told him, "Put your gun down and we'll show you what kind of nigger you really are." To be candid, the rest of the afternoon is a blur.
So that's the last officer. I do have another video to show. The only African-American officer. And it talks about who was there. Trump. People supporting Trump. People saying that Trump told them to come. He talked to, he shares later in his testimony of other African-American officers who were racially berated that entire day. He talks very passionately about everything being a blur. You know, and over, all of them are saying, you know, their disbelief in what they experienced and what they went through. And we saw it with our own eyes. But yet we're going to sit here, and I'm preaching to the choir. I know y'all, but let me just say it. Some of us sit back and act like this horrible thing did not happen in America. That we don't need to rise up and protest and hold our elected officials accountable. All of them. The ones that represent us in South Carolina. Take a stand. Democrats and Republicans. What happened was criminal. Worse than criminal. Treasonous. And yeah, some people are going to be on my YouTube page saying, do you know what treasonous means? Yes. And I mean it. I mean it. 6 months later, forget which one of them said it, but he said 6 months later, and January 6th is still not over for me. It's not over for those heroes, and it's not over for me. That's right. Virginia says it's like it never happened. Oh, okay. And by the way, Stephen Harnett, he posted a long post in the comments. You guys got to read it. Because Officer Fanone, you guys should follow him. He's very passionate. And he's very courageous because he's fighting against folks that don't want to hear it. We elected these people and they don't want to hear it. And so on that note, I think this is 2 minutes and 30 seconds. I hope you guys are hanging in there with me. I know sometimes it could be crazy. I'm going back and forth. But Rep Rankin, y'all, got a hold of, I think it was, I watched the whole thing, the whole committee hearing, and then I guess they had another hearing, and it was supposed to be on a different topic. So, but check out this exchange between two congressmen.
They were asked the question by several of our colleagues, including Ms. Cheney, about statements that you made saying that the January 6th violent insurrection against Congress was akin to a normal tourist visit. And those officers said they weren't tourists, they were terrorists. Do you stand by your statement that they were tourists?
I would like you to quote my exact statement, not your interpretation of my statement.
Okay. Watching the TV footage of those who entered the Capitol and walked through statuary halls showed people in an orderly fashion staying between the stanchions and ropes, taking videos and pictures. You know, if you didn't know the TV footage was a video from January 6th, you would actually think it was a normal tourist visit. Those are your words.
And I stand by that exact statement as I said it.
Okay. Do you agree or disagree with the officers who spent 4 or 5 hours battling that medieval mob that had baseball bats and lead pipes and so on? Do you stand by the statement that the people that they were fighting were tourists, or would you agree with them that they were terrorists?
That statement did not say that those people were tourists. Okay, read the statement.
Okay,
and
well, I'm asking you now. Well, you've got the opportunity to tell America right now, Mr. Clyde. Do you think that what they experienced was an attack by tourists or terrorists or violent insurrectionists? You've got the opportunity to clarify for the whole country right now.
If you will read the first part of my statement.
I'm not interested in that. I'm asking you.
You're not interested in my statement, are you?
Mr. Chair,
you
point
are
of
not.
parliamentary inquiry. Can you yield to me for 1 minute?
I have read your statement once. The whole country and lots of people online believed your statement that it was.
Okay, enough of that. But I just had to share it. That's the twilight zone that we're living in right now. It's in black and white, right? He says, you said they was terrorists. Oh, so this is the Democrat, Rep. Raskin, saying you said they was terrorists, Clyde. He said, I didn't say that. He said, read my statement. Read it. He said, oh, I got it verbatimly. He read it verbatim. I'm sorry, tourists, not terrorists. Freudian slip. So he reads it to him. And the guy says, I stand by everything I said. Still refusing to admit that these folks that showed up at the White House on January 6th, I'm sorry, not the White House, the Capitol on January 6th and tore it up were tourists. That is the world we live in today, y'all. And so I don't blame folks that distrust authority, because they say crazy stuff. But when they say crazy stuff, we need to use our V's and call them out. Call them out. The folks that are sitting on that select committee, They are standing strong for America. We need to support them, and we need to get at the truth. And this is what I predict is going to happen. That's why I had this one. I have this live, and I'm going to be yes, crazy girl. I'm going to be talking about this hearing and bringing it up because I want us to all pay attention to it as it goes through, because I believe we are witnessing the unraveling of Donald Trump's craziness, his illegalities. I believe that we're going to find out, the reason why the FOP and folks don't want to investigate it. It's because they're complicit. They're involved. I believe it's all going to come out. I believe we're going to hear some testimony that's going to blow our mind if we're open to it. We have to be open to it. We have to be open to change. When you sit back and think, how did we get here? How did we get here? We got here because elections have consequences. When slavery ended, 1863. And 40 acres and mule were ordered to be given to my folk, my people that I'm descendants of. You get your 40 acres and a mule, said General Sherman. Okay, great. Then they started hanging out the land. New president comes in. Very Trumpian president, Johnson. Forget that. Wiped it all clean. No, you don't. Nope. They don't have to give them anything. As a matter of fact, give them all their land back. And then I take a vacation to Hilton Head, and I see former plantations being inhabited by new mansions and resorts and golf clubs. Exclusive. They got the land back. That's the land that was given to enslaved African Americans. Or descendants of our ancestors. Elections have consequences. Complacency has consequences. We cannot let it happen. We cannot let January 6th and all who were involved. We're going to find out more. And this whole Jim Jordan guy wanting to be on the committee. Nancy Pelosi is like, what? Dude, you are a witness. We're going to subpoena and call you to testify. Can't be on a committee. For real? You spoke with Donald Trump on that day. What did y'all talk about? Crazy. And I'm going to go to my next topic. Let me just talk about the Capitol Police and my experience with the Capitol Police. So I've been in DC protesting, and there are some cool dudes, right? I mean, and again, I can't say for the people who live in DC and how it works for them. I'm just saying I'm in DC. I'm going there to protest. I was going there to protest the Kavanaugh appointment to the Supreme Court, and the Capitol Police was there, and they was just matter of fact guys, right? They had their handcuffs ready to arrest us and stuff like that. They was talking with us, chilling with us. Everything was very orchestrated. They are used to protest at the Capitol. They're used to protest when people come and they're not happy. But everything is kind of like, it's like a dance. It really is. It's like, okay, you go in, the protesters are told where they could be. We have training. You're told what happens if you get arrested. The officers just show up with the buses and the paddy wagons and stuff like that. You sign the protest, you walk up to the protest, and then the show begins. They're used to that. I haven't encountered anybody who I didn't feel very comfortable, and actually very glad that the Capitol Police was there to protect us. And I'm a protester. Then I went on vacation to DC, and it was awesome, y'all. I got to do a video just on DC as a tourist. It is so much fun. It's different, but it's great. And so now, I lived in Jersey. I've been to DC 200, 300, 400 times. But never as a tourist. I never stayed in the city. I never walked the streets. I never took the tours. Never did it as a tourist, right? So this particular time, you know, we saw a Capitol officer, and we was talking to him, and my husband, he was so funny. He said, "Okay, we're gonna do." He said, "Next time, don't cut him no slack." And they were joking, right? Guy, and the officer was like, "Oh yeah, I know what to do. We're gonna be ready for him next time." But it's a shame that it had to come down to that, you know. And it's actually, I don't know, I'm not even gonna say what I'm thinking. But remember, freedom, although it starts with free, it's not free. There's a cost. It takes work. All right, so I'm gonna go to my next topic, even though my head is exploding, and we're right at 30 minutes. But I did want to share with you guys real quick 2 things. One is here. Let's take a look at something new, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Agreement. Now, the bill itself is huge, and I'm not even going to try to read it until they're done doing everything that they're doing, and then I probably will read the cliff notes and then go back in and dig in. But check this out, y'all. If there's a lot that's in it. There's a lot that's in it. And I did see President Biden's, he had a press conference, and I was just like, yes, this is what we need. You know, let's bring jobs back. Let's stop sending our jobs and, you know, things overseas, right? So when I look at this, and I actually feel like, okay, what comes home for Marion County? Roads and bridges, yes, but who knows how much of that will end up here. Energy infrastructure, big deal. Passenger and freight rail, huge deal for those on the East Coast, right? We should have big ups to Amtrak. I love traveling by train, but it's antiquated and old. But check this, the thing that I'm drawn into is the $65 billion broadband. The $65 billion for broadband, because yes, we said at the same time, Stephen, yes. I mean, the fact is I believe that broadband should be free as air. It is the only way that we're going to be able to compete in the global marketplace. Every house, every family should have free broadband. And where I live, we're broadband desert, right? 50% of us don't have access. Now, I've been following HTC, and they're coming through Britain's Neck offering, I saw them put the pipes in, put the lines in for broadband down at the southern part of the country. But my point, let me see how much they're going to charge for it. I've just been skeptical of it. And that's just me. You know, nobody's reached out to me. You know, I haven't done the whole research, but they didn't say free broadband. They didn't say super fast broadband. They didn't say 200 megabits or 400 megabits. They said broadband, and all broadband's not broadband. But we all need it. We all need it. And young folks, we gotta help our grandpops and our grandmoms and our aunties and uncles, help them get up on technology, right? If you guys can, if you can afford it, or something happens, or you have a phone and you could pass it down to some of our older generation, pass them down that phone, hook that phone up to Wi-Fi for them, because everything is online now, and we ain't going back. And we cannot leave our own family behind. Okay, everything is online. All right, so I'm excited, and there was some stuff that our president talked about in the infrastructure bill, like you know, imports. They're going to force stuff to really start with the federal government. They're going to buy American, and they used to have rules around how much was considered American, whether it was 55% made in America or 75% American made in America. So he's making all kinds of changes about what Buy American is all about. So I'm just really, really excited and encouraged, past the partisan politics that we go through, that there are some bills that our president is putting on the table that really can make a difference in the lives of everyday Americans. And I know some of you have started to receive the monthly checks because you have children. And they're not called stimulus checks. They're like advance payments on your normal tax return. That's, I think, is awesome, right? because, they say that those checks have helped move some children out of poverty, but those are temporary. To get children moved out of poverty, we have to increase the wages, period. And I'll come back to that. But you guys know how I feel about the $15 minimum wage. I don't have to say it anymore, but I will. I'll break it down again a little bit later, but not today on today's call. And last but not least is don't get evicted. Now, I'm talking to Marion County. There are charities that can help you, right? And I'm not sure the stipulations or all of that, but I'll be happy to learn, right? So if you're living in your home, and please don't wait to the last minute. There's a housing crisis all across this land. There's a housing crisis in Marion County. They're hard to come across. We need new housing. We need repairs to housing. So do not get evicted. If you need help with your eviction, please reach out to me. And then I have other folks that I can bring to the table. And let's work on it together. Let's see, what's out there so that we can keep you in your home that you're in right now. All right. Now, it's not me. That's not what our nonprofit does, but I have friends that do that in other nonprofits. Okay. So that was it. And the very last thing I wanted to remind you guys of, and if you can please, please, please tell your friends and family, is that the Saturday, the We Care Coalition, so my day job, I'm a director for Pick 42 Foundation, and the We Care Coalition is having a COVID-19 vaccination clinic on Saturday for ages 12 and up. We have Moderna as well as Pfizer vaccines. And anybody, the first 50 who show up will receive a $20 gift card from Piggly Wiggly, Food Lion, or Walmart, your choice, okay? So it is really time for all of us to get vaccinated and for all of us to be safe. Delta is terrible. It is killing people. And I did receive a phone call last night. I'm not going to say from whom, but they was informing me that there is an outbreak in Marion County, and they were scared. And I'm scared. So please, 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 it don't matter why you didn't get vaccinated up until this point. We don't care. We just want you to come on Saturday. We're going to be at the Maxine Hines Enrichment Center, Health and Enrichment Center on Lowell Road in Mullins. We'll be there from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Please come, bring your family, bring your children 12 and up. Let's get safe together as a community so we do not have to die. So on that note, I wish you all a very good week. Okay, so Stephen Harnett has put some numbers, 89 confirmed cases in the past 2 weeks. Stephen Harnett, those 89 confirmed cases, is that in Marion County or is that statewide? This number so low makes me think in Marion County. And you're also going to see, I wait for him to confirm whether that's Marion County or statewide, but you also are going to start to see the testing locations pop up again, y'all. So with testing locations pop up again, that tells you that they're spread in our community. So not only are we going to be doing vaccinations, not this week, us Marion County, we're going to be doing testing towards the end of the month. Don't be surprised if you see clinics that are also doing testing. So that's crazy. Yeah, you can get, and I'll have some other folks, I bring some other folks to the table, but yes, they can answer your questions about the vaccines. And I was actually thinking about having like kind of an outdoor in-person question and answer session. But still, yes, you can get COVID-19 Delta even if you're vaccinated as a breakthrough. But you have a 99.9% chance that you will not end up in a hospital or the grave. So that's what we want for you. That's why we do it. That's why the partners of the We Care Coalition do it. That's why we care so much, because we care for our community. And we know that our community is the ones that are typically left out, Marion County. And, there's folks, I'm going to end on this. There's folks that like to compare it to this Tuskegee experiment. But remember, Tuskegee was when they did not give us the medicine. So they were keeping something from us. And now if we're not going to take the vaccine, it's almost like we're doing it to ourselves. Let's not. Let's move forward. Let's get healthy together. I'm always at the clinics, but I'll be there on Saturday. Look forward to seeing you. And I hope you all have a very blessed week. Bye.